Welcome back to the channel.
Today we are going to be checking out
The
some
Mob
of
Museum.
Las Vegas's most notorious criminals from across the country.
So come get lost with us in the greed.
Oh, I'm so glad you guys made it. Make sure you guys hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and make sure you ring that notification bell because when we hit 1,000 subscribers, we're still going to be dropping off the Strat. And I can't wait to take you guys with us. So let's go.
So here are the outside parking structure. You'll see there's a pretty cool mural that outlines the parking lot that is right next to the Mob Museum, and this is where you're going to want to park when you come to the museum.
Alright, so when you're watching this is where the Mob Casino is located. It's on the backside of Binion's, and you'll see downtown Grand.
So there are 3 different levels of passes. You have the general admission for $30, the deluxe, and the premier pass. All include 2 interactive experiences or 1 interactive experience depending on what you get. Both of those interactive experiences are police-based and not mob-based.
Under suspicion. That's pretty neat. It's America today, folks. You're under suspicion.
Hello, ladies and gents. It is an honor to welcome you.
They do have a pretty cool photo pass area where you can get your mugshot taken. Of course, Nacy wasn't willing to stand there long enough. They do have a little frame you hold in front of you that gives you a criminal number, but Nacy couldn't find it at the time. The museum starts with an area talking about immigrants, the crowded areas, the horrible job markets at the time, how people were living through the Great Depression and living in filth. But this is really the only part that even touches on those issues that brought about mobsters. The museum then immediately moved into basically calling out the mobsters and making them villains. There was a display by a police officer named Green, which could be related to me, I guess.
Your grandparents used to be what now?
So this is a map showing different connections of different activities and how everything sort of lined up between Cuba and the United States. The Arizona Club was a club between San Diego and Las Vegas and Salt Lake City that did some gambling, prostitution, and some other things.
So this is a picture of the Las Vegas Saloon in 1905. That's crazy.
These are some of the famous bootleggers and rum runners after the Prohibition started. This is one of the main pieces of the Mob Museum. It's the St. Valentine's Day Massacre wall. It's basically where a bunch of people were murdered in front of it in Chicago, and they rebuilt it brick by brick here. The St. Valentine's Day Massacre is supposed to be one of the deadliest mob hits in America. One of the interesting things is these are all the bullets that were pulled out of the bodies of the dead people in the wall, and they collected them and now put them on display.
Experiment, but in fact, prohibition was the business opportunity that changed organized crime in America forever.
Good old America, making its own villains.
starting to really push that law enforcement piece of the museum. This is where ballistics actually started, was the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. They pulled the bullets out and tried to match them with different pieces.
Booming gambling, prostitution,
Dick Tracy was an early comic book or graphic novel that really sort of hit hard on the G-men, which includes some of the people that we'll show in a second, but is really focused on prohibition and gangsters and mobsters.
I remember the Dick Tracy movie, it was so bad. Hoover was a G-man. Who knew? This whole crime thing, and then when you start busting people for doing things they were doing before, and then when you make these people heroes for...
So these were the weapons of the G-men on display. A pretty neat little artifact, they had Al Capone's revolver on display. In case you were not aware, the only thing they really ever got mobsters on was tax evasion. So they had a big display about tax dodgers and how they caught them for tax evasion. In this display, these are some of the court notes and notes taken by prosecutors and stuff during the tax evasion cases. So this is really still about all that tax evasion.
Obviously, it's just a replica. You think they're just gonna bring a real one in here and juice it up and be like, hey, mess with it, guys. 1 out of 10 goes down.
Interesting note about the chair, even though it was only a replica, Nacius still refused to sit in it. The museum had this interactive display about becoming a made man. Basically, you'd push a different things, it would ask, would you do this? And then you push something, and that made you a made man. They also talked a little bit about sports betting. If you remember the movie Field of Dreams, they reference how Shoeless Joe can't come because he cheated in life. These are some of the other things that they have proven where individuals gambled on different sporting events. So the next part of the museum talks about a commission that traveled the country dealing with different trials, trying to get witnesses to talk about the illegal activities that mobsters were doing. These plates represent different cities where those trials took place. And just to be clear, because some happened in Canada, they were technically hearings, not trials. These cans of tomato on the wall were meant to represent drug smuggling, but something to remember is that the reason why mobsters prospered so well is because they did help feed their communities. The Law Enforcement Museum is the old courthouse of Vegas where the Keffler hearings took place, but this elevator still exists, which is super cool. One thing they really didn't talk about was how the Keffler person who led all of the hearings across the country was just running for president, so this was just a political ploy to try to get him elected.
It's pretty cool.
The Keffler hearings were one of the first hearings that were shown across the nation on television and put in print media and other things, so they definitely became a spectacle across the United States at the
Wow,
time.
they made it like a show. Ugh, America.
The Keffler hearings did eventually come to Vegas, and we'll show you in a minute the actual courtroom where they had the hearings. Back in the day, if you did have a court appearance in Vegas, to your left right here would be the courtroom you'd have to go into. So this is the main courtroom for Las Vegas. You'll see here they do have a show that is projection-based that talks about the Keffler hearings, shows people throughout the hearings, and sort of details what happens in them. The show was engaging and interesting on the side of law enforcement. Luckily, this courtroom hasn't been used in many years. This, to both of us, was the coolest part of the museum. It showed old school Vegas and some of the cool, interesting pieces of it.
It's pretty cool though, the science.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
And then it showed some old equipment that people used to cheat at the casinos back in the day.
Come over here, please.
We would have loved to take a pool on this one-armed bandit. There was a lot of cool old memorabilia from the old casinos, including chips and different room keys and stuff.
That's what I think is cool, is like the chips.
They had a display of an old sheriff named Lamb who connected Clark County Sheriff Department with the local police. You could click on this interactive display and it would show you different ways that people used to cheat at the casinos.
You could like pull it,
This was pretty awesome. At the bottom, there's a pot of chips that people actually custom made and then turned into the casinos for profit.
So this is about the Cuba connection.
These are some of the first of their kind to be interactive and more advanced slot machines. Starts of what you see today. Now I had asked if they'd let me take some of this money to pay off some of my student loan debt, but they said no, so if you want to support me, definitely head on over to our Patreon page. Maybe you can help me out.
What they did was miscalibrate the rules.
In taking down the mob, the RICO Act.
I remember that. Well, I remember learning about that.
This was just a display of illegal items.
The government cares so much about these things. Brazilian redwood pistol grip. There's little to no chance that they would ever figure.
This was one of the worst displays in the entire museum. It showed fake items and it was like, pick the fake items.
They're like, which is real, which is fake, and it's pretty obvious which is real and which is fake.
All right, so that concludes our visit to the Mob Museum. It was interesting. It's called the Mob Museum, but really it's very police focused. I didn't really learn a lot about the individual mobsters. I thought I would learn more about the individuals themselves.
Yeah, I mean the whole museum is basically based around law enforcement. I don't know why they call it mob at all. I guess that's kind of the focus on who they arrested, but not super informative on the mob side, a lot more informative on the law enforcement side, court side of it, and sort of a lot of propaganda about how they took them down, but then it never actually tells what happened because nothing actually came from those things. So I don't know if it's a recommend for me. It's really small, in my opinion, for museums that we've been to. This is probably one of the smaller ones we've been to for sure.
We
and
got
it was
here at
30.
9.
And it was $30 for the low-end ticket, up to like $70 for the high-end ticket, and we did get here at 9.
We got here at 9:30 and we're done at 11, so
And we went really slow.
Yeah.
And had to wait for a couple movies to play and stuff. So I don't know if it's worth it, but let us know in the comments below if you've been here. What did you think of the Mob Museum?
I will say my favorite room though in the whole museum that we went to was the room that was kind of casino based, and it had memorabilia from like the Flamingo and a few of the other old casinos. So that room was probably the coolest room to me that was in there, but again, I'm not sure if it's worth that full admission price to come here.
Yeah, nothing really stood out. If you look at our World War II museum, you'll see what like staging looks like here. There wasn't much of that. And as for like artifacts or items, there weren't that many of those either. So it was kind of like, I'm not sure what the point of this is.
But if you're looking for something to do while you're on Fremont Street, you can definitely check it out. But I would recommend other things before coming here.
Yeah,
So-
it's a great way to get out of the sun. If you need to get out of the sun and get a little bit of respite. Again, it does cost a little bit of money. So don't forget to like this video
hit that subscribe button,
and ring that notification bell so you get notified when we do more Las Vegas content.
and we'll see you guys in the next adventure.
Yeah, bye everybody.
Bye!